على آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lessons on emotional intelligence from an Islamic perspective. Last week, or the week before, we were speaking about the way that a person can go about assessing other people's feelings and having empathy towards them, and the importance of empathy when it comes to Islamic or emotional intelligence from Islamic perspective. And empathy, we said, was the ability for you to put yourself in someone else's shoes, feel what they're feeling, and then take the necessary steps. Once you know that someone is going through something, you take necessary steps to make them feel better or to improve their mood. Someone be angry, whether they be sad, etc. This week I want to focus on body language. And this is an interesting topic because body language is part of emotional intelligence, because people communicate their emotions and feelings through nonverbal communication, nonverbal signals. So if somebody, for example, notices somebody else behaving a certain way, they could be, for example, far removed from everybody. Or they could be, for example, very tense when they're standing. Even though they're with you, presence, the way that they're standing is indication of what they're feeling. This is the idea of body language. You read somebody, how they are looking, their facial features, and you make a judgment. Sad, upset, angry, worried. And this quality is actually from the qualities of the Prophet ﷺ. It is also a quality the Sahaba radiallahu anhum had. And in fact, they used to be very perceptive of the Prophet ﷺ's body language. And we'll see today, and we also have to become this way. Because to be emotionally intelligent, someone can't spell it out for you all the time. I mean, I think you would be emotionally unintelligent if someone has to tell you they're sad, right? Because that means you have no idea what's going on. The same way if somebody is sad or worried, and you sense that from what you're noticing from their body language, you take the steps to regulate their emotions. If they're feeling worried, you do something with your own body to make them feel more comfortable. We'll see in a second some of these examples. So first, what is body language in terms of a definition? Body language refers to the nonverbal signals that we use to communicate. These nonverbal signals make up a huge part of our daily communication. In fact, according to one study, body language may account for 60% to 65% of all communication. Examples of body language include facial expressions, eye gazing, gestures, posture, and body movements. In many cases, the things we don't say can convey meanings or volumes of information. Okay, so now that we understand this point, it's important for us as Muslims to be mindful that body language and body nonverbal signals may differ from culture to culture and from community to community. So sometimes there's one meaning to certain behavior, and some other places could have a different meaning. In any case, you, the individual, the most intelligent Muslim, should be able to read that behavior in the context in which it is in. Which in your culture, or as we'll see soon, in the Muslim way of doing things, or Islamic meaning of certain things. And this is important because in Islam, there's many ways in which you can communicate to people. For the Muslim, we need to be perceptive. We need to be able to understand people what they're saying without them having to say it. And this is important because without that knowledge, you will put yourself in trouble. You will put yourself in trouble because you're going to come across as someone who is emotionally unaware and socially inept. For example, somebody tries to give you a signal, to go away, and you're not the person who's perceptive. You're going to have to wait for the person to tell you, get lost. And that's your fault because you didn't have emotional intelligence. So the ulama, they talk about it. There's tasrih wa talmih. Tasrih is somebody says it straight. But talmih is they're going to hint around it. And the wise person, he takes the hint. But sometimes you don't know what the hint is. For example, somebody will tell you, without saying it, the way they're standing, it's like, leave me alone, please. And you keep going bothering them. When they tell you, get lost from here, in your face, and you get hurt, it's your fault for not being perceptive. Because he's trying to say it in a nice way. And also, talmih works with language. Someone could tell you an answer to a question that's like you ask, looking for yes or no, he'll give you a little bit of You're not sure what he said. He said yes or no, which means I don't want to answer. Leave it like that. And we'll see some examples. Sahaba were very attuned with the Prophet ﷺ's behavior and what his body language meant. They knew very well. So, once we understand that body language is a whole list of things, and there's so many cues that can be there. For example, when somebody's happy, how do they look? When they're sad, how do they look? Right? Happy, how would they behave? Confusion. Let's give some examples. I'm going to read from now an Islamic book. One of the contemporary authors has written this book. And it's a very interesting book, right? Very, very interesting. And what he tried to do, the Shaykh, he tried to gather all the hadith and evidences about body language. And he called it Manhaj Nabawi fi ta'abiri bi lughat al-jasad. The prophetic methodology in expressing body language. Okay, it's very interesting work. Right? So he brought a hadith, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and explained alongside its explanations. And it's interesting work because we're going to read it mostly from that book, right? So you can find it also available online. In that book, the Shaykh he mentions in the beginning the importance of body language. And before even going there, somebody may say, is it even allowed for us as Muslims to be studying and learning about body language? Is it halal in Islam? Because body language seems, it's a mixture of taking something which is apparent and interpreting it to what's inapparent, to what's hidden. To use the external as evidence for the internal. Is that halal or is that haram? And why I'm saying this, because we know in Islam, some things can be interpretations of people's behavior and totally wrong. But that's why we have fortune tellers and soothsayers who will look at your hand and tell you your future. Right? It's wrong. Or someone, I don't know what they're doing, looking at the bottom of your coffee cup. And it was, subhanAllah, what is that going to show you? Right? But someone say that's what they do, right? So this, or now a new popular one, Tahleel al-Shakhsi, they call it. Personality analysis. And a lot of people are interested in this. I can look at somebody's behavior, she's like this, and he's like that, and she's like this, she's like that. So the scholars, they spend time discussing this. What's the ruling on this? And it's important to know there are some types, right, of body language or what you call identity revelation or personality reveals, which are un-Islamic, and some of them which is Islamic. The one we're talking about is the Islamic version. And what makes it Islamic? It's based on the Quran and Sunnah and actual psychology/science. Right, you guys with me? Quran, Sunnah. Right? This is what it's based on, and what science and psychology has established. So studying body language that's based on the Kitab and Sunnah, as we'll see, it's good because the Quran and Sunnah teach us how the Prophet ﷺ behaved, what the Sahaba derived from his character and manners. Then it's what psychology and science, established science, shows us that when somebody's sad, they look like they usually behave, their facial feature like this. When someone's happy, they're usually smiling, right? And what kind of smile? How's their eyes? This is called, right, Islamic body language because it's based on real asbab. What is the guidelines for haram version? Any study of body language or something of the unseen, because remember, you cannot see someone's character, personality based on some things. If any kind of analysis or deriving of someone's character or someone's feelings, which is not based on the Quran and Sunnah, and is not based on verifiable science, a real tangible means, then it's nonsense. And take it as a principle because it's connected to Tawheed. For those of us who remember, we studied Kitab al-Tawheed a long time ago. When it comes to shirk fil asbab, polytheism when it comes to the means, asbab, the means you take. So pay attention. Right now, there's one type of body language is un-Islamic called graphology. You look at someone's handwriting and their signature and say, oh, he's smart. This guy's dumb. This guy's like this. Is this actually Islamic? That's a batil, a nonsense. Right? Because your signature, your handwriting has nothing to do with what's going on in you. At most, you can reveal that somebody has bad penmanship or good penmanship. Although I think some studies find that people who are intelligent write fast. It's an excuse we all use, all of us bad writers like me. We're intelligent, we write so fast we don't know what writing. Astaghfirullah. But it's true in some degree. But that's not character. Hatta Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah used to write very fast. So fast no one knows what he's reading. No one knows what he's writing except for one of his students. He's the official reader of the work of Shaykh Islam. He knows. Because he's the one who reads the handwriting. Because he writes so fast. Of course, mashallah, the ilm is coming to his head Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ayatillah. But the idea is, if I saw your writing, can I tell you you're rich, poor, healthy, sick? No. That's falsehood. Why? It's a principle. Al-Qaida, Shaykh Muthaymi mentions in the explanation, Kitab al-Tawheed, very nice principle. And that كل إنسان, every person, اعتمد على السبب, who relies upon a means, لم يجعله الشرع سببا, who the Sharia never placed as a real means, فإنه مشرك شرك أصغر. Any means which the Sharia has not legislated as an actual means to achieve something, then this means also has not been proven scientifically or by experience. Then this means, relying on it, considering it effective, is shirk asghar, minor shirk. A simple example, when the person writes, and you say, okay, based on this writing, this person is like this. What's the connection between the writing and the character? Not very much. It's not proven in the Kitab, not proven in the Quran, not the Sunnah, not the Sahaba, not the science. So what kind of means is that? You made it up. It's a fake. It's fictitious. Another example, which is very common nowadays, and Muslims, we have to warn against it, New Age spiritualism. You guys know the people who have crystals in their right? Healing crystals? Right? It sounds so foolish, right? Adults who have crystals, they pay a big top dollar for a crystal, they say it's a healing crystal. There is no scientific study whatsoever that a diamond or a stone can heal you from anything. Right? Especially the thing that they say it emits energy. No, that's a bad sale, right? Someone tricked you. And these people say it cures me, it gives me good auras. And if I had time, I'll explain to you how they would derive this. It's even more silly. So this is haram, shirk asghar. Why? Because you attach the means to something which the Sharia didn't, and science or experimentation didn't. So we're not talking about those kinds of body language. We're talking about psychology and science, which is shown in the Quran and Sunnah, which is established. Hence, scholars have said studying body language is permissible because it falls into a chapter called Al-Firasa. Al-Firasa can be translated as intuition, or it can be translated as sacred or inspiration, or I think intuition is a better translation. And it's the capacity, and there's different types of it, for someone to get to something, for example, a conclusion of something unseen by ways, right, that either are trained or Allah inspires you to. So scholars like Imam Ibn Qayyim in Madarij al-Salikin, he has a long chapter about manzilatul firasa, the station of firasa, wa anwa'uh, and he mentions many times. One of them is imaniyah, one of them is riyadiyah, another one's like this, means there's some you can learn, some which is inspiration from Allah. For example, some scholars in Sahaba, they were able to tell certain things about people from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them that, firasa. And the stab, obviously, that this is what the chapter is. So I'm not going to read the long passage because of the time. But Ibn Qayyim talks of firasa. So some scholars said body language falls into that chapter, where you look at people and you based on what's apparent. Wallahu a'lam, maybe this is going on. And of course, firasa is much more piercing. It gives you more insight. But we're just talking about somebody's folding their hands. Right? You don't have to have a firasa imaniyah to know that guy's probably angry. Right? So some of us, we know this, but this is called body language. What do you do when someone is crossing their arms? If you're not emotionally intelligent, you don't care. So this guy's just bored. He's crossing his hand. I don't know. No, but you look, you say, no, something's wrong. Because if he's doing that, he must be upset. Did I say something? Or is the conversation going in a way that's going to lead to something worse? Because if you can tell the signs, you can predict the behavior. And that's another thing too. If I can see how somebody's behaving, or read their face, I can say, hey, maybe I should stop doing this, or I should start doing this, etc. So now that we understand the backbone behind this, the principle for it, let's look into some of the Islamic side of things and learn some of this, inshallah. And so here, in that book I was talking about, the Shaykh, he mentions the importance of expressing, or knowledge of expressing, or knowledge of body language. And he says that in there, that the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, they were very well acquainted with the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's body language, his movements, and his actions. Hadith al-Bukhari, Muslim, Hadith Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, so he said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أشد حياء من عذراء في خدرها. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is more shy than a virgin girl in her home. فإذا رأى شيئا يكرهه عرفناه في وجهه. If he ever saw something he disliked, we could tell the dislike on his face. Pay attention to Sahaba, they knew when the Prophet was upset, just look at his face. If he's getting angry, how does his face look? That's a sign that what you're doing is wrong. Stop it. Or don't do it. Here, Hafiz Ibn Hajar commented, rahimahullah, saying that he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would not directly tell the Sahaba what bothered him, made him disliked or disgusted or upset. Rather, he would change his face. So the Sahaba understood that from his face. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ has haya. He has very much, a lot of haya. We said haya min adra'i. So he has so much haya. So that haya prevented him from saying openly what was bothering him. So they used to read his face. This teaches us also the importance of that, studying body language and knowing that. And the Sahaba recorded a lot of these incidences, as we'll see one by one. Let's take a look at some examples to get the idea. The first one is to do with the Prophet ﷺ's face whenever he was upset. So they knew by looking at his face, you could tell how upset he is. Well, let's give an example. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in the Hadith Bukhari, he says, "Uhdiya ilayya," or Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "hultun sira'u." That the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave me a certain hulla, certain silk garment. Okay, so I wore it. فَرَأَيْتُ الْغَضَبْ فِي وَجْهِهِ. Then I saw his anger on his face when he saw me. And why is the Prophet angry? Silk is haram for men, right? So he says, as soon as I saw it, I went home and I ripped it up and I gave it to my wives in pieces. Because women are allowed to use the silk, so I got rid of it immediately. But he didn't have to wait for the Prophet ﷺ to yell at him or to turn to him and say, Ali, how could you do that? Right? Because he didn't give you it. Obviously, he didn't give it to him for him to wear it. Right? This is the point. Ibn Hajar commented against saying that the fact that the Prophet ﷺ's face changed indicated how he disliked what he was wearing, right? Alongside the fact that he gifted it to him. So the gifting wasn't for him to wear it. It was gifted to give it to your wives. But the Prophet ﷺ didn't want to say it, so he just used that signal. The face changed, it turned red, as we'll see in other examples. Here, this Ali's perception, emotional intelligence. He didn't have to wait for the Prophet ﷺ to say, why are you doing that? Because then it's going to become more awkward, because Ali's relationship to the Prophet ﷺ is what? What's their relationship? Yeah? His father-in-law and his cousin, right? Is it cousin? Yeah. So they're both at the same time. And what's important behind this, the Prophet ﷺ would not, right, inshallah, he would not cross the line there either. And we know that because the Hadith Bukhari and Muslim, when Ali and Fatima got into arguing, he found Ali in the masjid, Abu Turab, right? That's where he got nicknamed, lying on the floor. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? Qum ya Abu Turab, get up Abu Turab, and he sent him back home. He never asked him, what'd you do? And why you made my daughter upset? See? That's a dalil. Ibn Hajar says, father-in-laws, in-laws should be diplomatic. Dalil wadih. Most Muslims, they don't know. It's a qaida. You want diplomacy? Keep the peace. That's the rule. Ali never had, the Prophet never asked Ali. His father. So here, when he saw Ali, he got upset, but he's not going to tell Ali, hey, Ali, what you did that for? And this is because Ali and his relationship very close. And also you can see the Prophet ﷺ, how emotionally intelligent he was. He taught us how to be emotionally intelligent. So they interacted with him the way that he would interact with them. And also you can see the benefit behind this. Because if somebody gives you indirect clues, I don't like this, I like this, what does it help you to do? You can change your behavior while getting in trouble. But if you have to wait for somebody to really blow up or get angry or explode on you with bad character, then later your relationship is going to become soured. A lot of us, isn't that what happens? We keep pushing people to the edge, and finally the guy turns on us, or he responds, and we're like, what was that all about? No, well, you've been doing it for a long time. You don't realize. And that's a lot of times what you notice, we need to start learning from the beginning. We'll look at many good examples of it. Another one, the Prophet's face would turn red. Literally, his veins will become swollen. So the Sahaba would see that, especially when he got very angry. Right? And this is obviously when the violation of the laws of Allah. Mostly when the Sharia is violated, the Prophet gets very angry because he doesn't get angry for his own sake. As Aisha mentions, radhiyallahu anha. So that's an example. Let's look at an example of the Prophet's happiness. So it's mentioned, and again, this hadith al-Bukhari, this version is Muslim, sorry, hadith Muslim. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he came out to the Sahaba one day when they're this is actually a different hadith. So this one, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to the Sahaba one day, and he was doing something earlier, and he came to them and he was smiling radiantly. And the wording the hadith mentions, يَتَهَلَّلْ كَأَنَّهُمْ, his face was shining bright, like it was if it was a type of silver or a type of vessel. And this wording the Sahaba described uniquely. He came to us with that appearance, meaning the commentators say that he came with amarat surur, clear happiness. But the wording they used was his face was radiant, like that of fidda, of silver. And what was the radiance from? The goodness that something that happened to him. Something that happened to him and made him very happy. So he would smile, he would make it happy, apparent that he's happy. And the Sahaba would read that he's happy. So even us, when we were happy, you're allowed to show it. Right, to your expression, smiling. And this is what also is good. The Prophet ﷺ would be happy and allow people to know that he's happy. And Sahaba would actually find out that he's happy and guess it correctly. And one hadith, you can imagine, another hadith, he came to them, ﷺ, smiling. They said, Ya Rasulullah, it looks like you have طيب النفس, you are very cheerful today. He said, yes, I am. So the fact that the Sahaba could read it easily because he's so happy. And then he said yes, and he explained to them some benefit, another hadith. So that idea is also showing us, if you're happy, you can express it. And if you're angry, we said you're allowed to express it within the boundaries of the Sharia. And we talked about a couple of weeks ago, sadness. If you're sad, you're allowed to go through it, and within the boundaries of the Sharia. Let's now turn our attention, to some other examples that have to do with the reasons as to why the Prophet ﷺ would do what he would do. Because he had many signs that he would do certain things that would indicate something. An example, the Prophet ﷺ, when he used to get when he used to be amazed by something, he would hit his hand onto his thigh out of amazement. Example, hadith, Al-Bukhari Muslim, Nabi ﷺ entered upon Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima when they're both underneath the sheet, they were sleeping. And he came to them at night time, this is tahajjud time, and he said to them, أَلَا تُصَلُّونَ, are you not going to pray tahajjud? Ali radiallahu anhu said, Ya Rasulullah, إِنَّمَا أَنفُسَنَا بِيَدِ اللَّهِ, our souls are in the hand of Allah. فِإِذَا شَاءَ يَبْعَثَنَا يَبْعَثَنَا. If Allah wants to bring us back to life to pray, we will pray it. And bring our souls back from sleep. So Nabi ﷺ went away, and then he hit his hand on his thigh. And he said, وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. Mankind is surely mostly argumentative. And so here, this quality they did when he hit his hand on his thigh is a sign of amazement. And this is showing that Rasul ﷺ had a certain pattern that he showed he's amazed. Again, it's not wajib to pray tahajjud, but he was encouraging them, and he was hoping obviously that they would do it. But the point is, the amazement that he had, that sign that he did there. I want to now turn our attention to why the Prophet ﷺ would do these different types of body language, because this is the benefit behind all of it. We don't want to just learn different signs, we want to know what's the benefit and how we can employ it in our everyday lives. And this is especially important considering the fact that body language is a way to teach people things. So one of the major ways reasons why the Prophet ﷺ would use body language is asbab ta'limiyya, educational purposes. He would use body language to educate and teach, and this was his tools of education. Today, there's many research papers and books that have been published about the pedagogy, the Prophet ﷺ methodology of teaching. How did he teach? How did he discipline? How did he convey information? And the Prophet ﷺ used many different methods, because we know he's the best teacher. The Sahabi said, مَا رَأَيْتُ مُعَلِّمًا قَبْلَهُ وَلَا بَعْدُهُ خَيْرٌ مِنْهُ. I never saw a teacher before anyone before him or after him better than him. And when the Prophet ﷺ is the best teacher, he does the best things. So these are one of the ways he taught, to use his body language, because he's very aware of how to convey the information to people. Let's look at some example. One hadith, and many of us we know this hadith Bukhari and Muslim, about major sins. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting one day, reclining on a pillow, and he told the Sahaba, أَلَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِأَكْبَرِ كَبَائِرِ. Should I not tell you the worst or the major sins? Should I tell you the greatest of the major sins? قُلْنَا بَلَا يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. He said, of course, Ya Rasulullah. He said, الْإِشْرَاكُ بِاللَّهِ, associating partners with Allah. وَعُقُوقُ الْوَالِدَيْنِ, being disobedient to your parents. And then it says, وَكَانَ مُتَّكِئًا. He was leaning down all this while. فَجَلَسَ. Then he got up. He was leaning down, he got up. أَلَا وَقَوْلُ الزُّورِ وَشَهَادَةُ الزُّورِ. He said, be wary of the false testimony and idle speech, or the false testimony and speech. And he repeated it. He kept repeating it. Until the Sahabi said, I wish that he would stop, right? Because of how much mercy you have for the Prophet ﷺ, because he kept saying it. In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was lying down or leaning, and he said, shirk, disobedience to parents. When it came to shahadat al-zur, false testimony, he got up. Why he get up? To let them know this is the worst in this context. Not the worst of all of them, but in this context, I want to emphasize this one. And it's interesting because scholars explain the fact that he got up. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was trying to show them the evil of shahadat al-zur, how evil it is, the false testimony, and the sin, the great severity of it. Not that obviously it's worse than shirk, but in this context, he wanted to put the emphasis there. So he moved his seat. Why? So because the Sahaba side connected to what he said and what he did. They don't forget. And you know what's interesting? Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, the end of times, after the Sahaba pass, what's going to happen? At the end will come a third generation, right? Fourth generation, who are going to give testimony before they're asked to give it. And he said, Shahada Zur increase at the end of times. You see, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he is a true teacher. He knows what is important and what to put in context. So the fact that he moved his seating, just to let them know that, for the listener, it goes in deeper. Why? Because you can forget words, but you don't forget actions. Actions speak louder than words. You see, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the greatest teacher, guys. Sometimes this is how you teach kids, you teach people. You have to do something that keeps their memory. And sometimes you can see that small changes, it stays with you. Because you say that happened to me one day, and I can't forget. The Sahaba, they didn't forget because they remember the exact وَكَانَ مُتَّكِئًا فَجَلَسَ. Then they mentioned the hadith. So that's a beautiful example. Another example, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if he wanted to give someone attention to something, sometimes he would take hold of them, their hand or their leg, and he would squeeze it lightly. Right? Apply pressure. This is important because many of us, we don't know that part of body language, when you study it, is to do with touch. One of the important types, gestures, and is touch. And touch is very, very, very effective. So when it comes to touch, there's different types of touch, right? Obviously, we're talking about here, nothing inappropriate, of course, no stuff for Allah, right? It's proper, we're talking proper things here. So touch that's good to obviously get someone's attention. It could be for a child, right? Grabbing the shoulder, grabbing by the head. The show affection and nearness, a concern. But for someone, when it's correcting, the Prophet ﷺ would squeeze the hand or the leg of someone, right, to let them know this is wrong or this is right. And Sahaba also would use that method. And depending on the severity of the squeeze, the worse it is. Right? You can tell, okay, this is very bad, okay, because the Shaykh might grab your hand and squeeze a little harder. Don't say that, kind of thing. Or sometimes he'll grab your hand, even though he wants to tell you something, and he'll grab your hand. Why? Pay attention. You see, tanbih. It's important. Sometimes someone will come to you and grab you, he'll touch you your shoulder and say, can I tell you something? And most of us, we know when someone touches your shoulder, what is he trying to do? Connect. And if you don't know already, it actually works in all across the world. People, they know this. Even celebrities, they use it, right? You touch someone slightly on the forearm. This creates human touch. It creates better interaction. Sometimes it makes a business deal. Kuffar, they know this. That's how they do this. And so what's interesting, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who would do that. Hey, Aisha, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was praying. Aisha was sleeping in front of him between the Qibla and him. And the Prophet wanted to make sujood, so he would just squeeze their leg lightly to let her know that he's going to come down. To let her know that to move her feet. Another instances, he would do that, alayhi salatu wasalam, for other reasons. And Sahaba would do it too. For example, one Sahabi, a tabi'i came to him talking with the hukam and the rulers. He said, grabbed his hand, he squeezed it very tightly. He told him, hadith Rasulullah, stay away from this. Means what? When he grabbed his hand, the tabi'i knows, this is haram, this is not the sunnah of Rasulullah to be talking with the rulers like that. But he said the fact that he grabbed their hand to let him know, no. Because this idea is that this is a discouragement, this is a type of rebuke. Obviously, you're not hurting the person, but you're grabbing to get, because pressure indicates what? A level of concern. If someone grabs your hand lightly, so tightly, the different meanings. And this is interesting because we know today touch works. And so obviously when it comes to teaching people, if you want someone to take in some information, you want to first let them know what? I care. Hadith now, Sunnah Abi Dawud, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Some scholars grade Hassan, some scholars graded weak. But Ibn Hajj said it's Hassan, Imam al-Albani said it's a weak hadith, but it's a hadith that's interesting. One day, the time of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they brought to him a boy who was doing some trouble. That's okay, it's important. It's tarbiyah for the awlad. For us, it could be a son, it could be a student. So the people said this, he was doing something. So the Rasul came to him, or it was brought to him, and Rasulullah asked him, what were you doing? He said he was throwing rocks. He was throwing a rock onto the palm tree. And so Rasulullah said, why are you doing that? He said, I was trying to get the dates. Okay, it's children, right? That's also fa'idah. He was throwing rocks. This is called antisocial behavior, right? It's not correct. For our time, it's like someone throwing a rock at a fence or somebody's car or something. So he brought him and said, why are you doing that? He said, I'm trying to get the dates down. So that's a logical answer. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam brought him close and he rubbed his head. And before that, he told him, that's not how you get the dates. Eat the dates that fall down. Don't hit it down. Then the Prophet grabbed his head and rubbed it and said, may Allah fill your stomach. I want you to pay attention. The child said he's hungry. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam empathized, hungry. That's why he's doing it. First su'al, then when he got the answer, he gave him compassion. You see, there's so many layers of tarbiyah there. The fact that he grabbed his head and rubbed his head and made dua for him, what is that for? What was the benefit behind that? The Prophet couldn't give him a date to feed him. So he made dua to say, I understand where you're coming from. I'm with you. I know where you're coming from. But he corrected him too. Whereas us, our tarbiyah is not tarbiyah. You make inkar a munkar, you make a bigger munkar. Right? Sometimes, right? Someone comes, you do something innocent, you get uquba or something, a punishment that's bigger. Why? Because we don't know sometimes what we're doing. Think about the Prophet ﷺ, how he could have corrected it. And he used many methods. But one of the things he did, he corrected the behavior by teaching pro-social behavior, that's what they call it. So don't eat the dates like that, eat it when it falls down. Then he empathized. The touch on the head, that's the point I want to highlight. This is very powerful. Because children love to know that they're cared for and they're loved. If you let them know that, they listen to anything you say. But if you don't let them know you love them, they're not going to listen to anything you say. Who are you anyways to tell me something? If you only come and tell me what I'm doing wrong. You don't. And the fact that the Prophet asked, why you did it? It goes back to last week's lesson, right? The week before. Which is, you ask before you make inkar. Su'al qabl, istifham qabl inkar. You ask before you can punish. What if he said, I was getting something that belonged to me? It's not wrong now. But if you punished him, why you hit the rock and the stone and the tree? You beat him, and he has a good reason. Oh, okay, now you have to go and do some kind of retribution. It's the same thing, Ikhwan. If someone does something weird, you ask them, what are you doing? Because what if his answer is good? Then you look bad for suspecting otherwise. We mentioned on that 2 weeks ago, but this is beautiful to show this idea of Prophet ﷺ always being mindful of the person he's talking to. Let's talk about voice now. Ulu was so, the Prophet ﷺ raised his voice when he teaches. And many of us, we know this, raising the voice is something which it can be done. But a lot of people, they don't know this. Hadith Jabir bin Abdullah, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is a different hadith. So this is not Hadith Jabir, this is this one. So this is Hadith Bukhari, Muslim, Kitab al-Ilm. And Bukhari, in his Kitab al-Ilm, he has Bab, Rafa'a sawtahu bi'ilmi, raising your voice with knowledge. And it says, the Prophet ﷺ was with us in a travel where he was behind us. And we got ahead of him. We were getting ready for salah. So we're making wudu. فَجَعَلْنَا نَمْسَحُ عَلَىٰ أَرْجُلِنَا. So we started wiping on our feet. You see, this is واضح دليل against the Shia who makes مسح على الرجل. It's not like the Quran didn't tell us to do anyways, but this is a nice hadith. They were doing that. فَنَادَى بِأَعْلَى صَوْتِهِ. The Prophet yelled as loud as he could behind them. وَيْلٌ لِلْأَعْقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ مَرَّتَيْنِ أَوْ ثَلَاثًا. So he was behind them, so he raised his voice very loudly. Beware! Woe to the ankle at the heels from hellfire. Why did he raise his voice so loudly? So they can hear him, but also they can know this is very dangerous, what you're doing. Because we know that wudu is not complete. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the khutbah to Jum'ah, Hadith Jabir bin Abdullah fi Sahih Muslim, when he used to go to the minbar, how was his voice? يحمرت عيناه, his eyes would turn red. وعلى صوته, his voice would go loud. Today some people are like, why is the Imam yelling? It's just Sunnah Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why you don't get that? Because the Jum'ah khutbah is not a dars. And many of us, we need to be yelled at. That's how we're going to get it somewhere, right? Because if Shaykh is talking to you nicely, you're going to sit there. If he's talking about Jahannam, he's not going to talk to you nicely maybe. But also, what's the benefit behind being loud? the ilm al-sha'n, how serious that affair is. The Prophet will talk about the minbar, and it's very interesting because today it's kind of a lost sunnah, but also the fact that we have microphones, so you can't yell too loud because you're going to break the mic too. We've seen actually good examples of that. Someone blow the mic right after Eid because he forgot the mic. He's just yelling like so loud. It's okay, well, not that loud. But here, we're not very used to it. But back home, back in Muslim countries, they yell in the khutbah. And people love it because it really does captivate you. But the Prophet ﷺ used to do that. In one hadith, Nu'man al-Bashir mentioned the Prophet ﷺ was in the minbar yelling about the danger of hellfire. We could hear his voice in the suq, in the market. You know how far away that is? But the Prophet ﷺ was so loud. But also someone could say, the Prophet ﷺ, was his voice always that loud? Well, it's a miracle too. Because the Prophet's voice can reach far. We know that because there's some scholars like Imam Suyuti in Kitab Khasa'is al-Kubra, he brings the story of the Hajj al-Wida'. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Jazakallah khair, he used to give the khutbah. When I gave the khutbah Hajj al-Wida', there's no mic. How many Sahaba are there in the Hajj al-Wida'? Anyone knows? How many Sahaba were there? 100,000. That's the highest estimate we have. How is 100,000 people going to hear him? So Imam Suyuti brings the narration, the Prophet's voice, from the miracles, the voice reached all the way. Allahu Akbar, 100,000 people, no mic. It's a miracle from miracles of Allah. But also the Prophet's voice was strong. But this point is, it's not every time the Prophet spoke like that, right? Not every time he's yelling. But in Jum'ah khutbah, you know it's serious because Jum'ah. But outside of Jum'ah, he doesn't. What's the proof? The same context, pay attention to this. When you're teaching, if you're raising your voice, doesn't mean someone else comes to you, you're going to raise your voice. Same hadith, same chapter, Jum'ah, Bukhari, Muslim. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was giving the Jum'ah khutbah, and a man walked into the masjid and said, Ya Rasulullah, there's a man here who doesn't know anything about deen. The man's talking about himself. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam got down from the minbar, he called one Sahaba, get a chair. The Jum'ah khutbah is going on, he can't stop the Jum'ah. They got a chair, the Prophet sat down, he talked about the deen, the Prophet explained to him the basics, he's done, they moved the chair, he went back on the minbar. Was the Prophet yelling at him there? No. Jum'ah khutbah, loud. Here, normal. Very beneficial to show the Prophet's style, his style shifting, this is what we call it. He's changing his voice based on the context. It also teaches how much empathy the Prophet have. He stopped the khutbah to teach someone. Because if someone comes to the masjid and says, I want to learn, we have to be ready to teach. Right? This is the purpose of da'wah. But it's beautiful how the Jum'ah khutbah, how he was, and outside it was different. This shows you that's one of his methods when it comes to his teaching methods, when it comes to the idea of body language and cues. Let's give another example. The Prophet ﷺ, why he would do certain type of cues. I'll give an example here, 1 second. So inshallah, maybe I'll just use this example instead. Coming now to Western body language. In Western body language guidelines, they mention there's different types, right, of body language. And one of them is gestures. Okay, gestures. And this is important. So somebody gives you a gesture with their hand as an indication of something. And gestures are interesting because they're culturally dependent on what culture you're in. But they can also be universal, right? And usually these symbols, they are there to let you know something is good or bad. Generally, if we see someone, whose hands are clenched together, it usually means something is happening of tense. Someone might be tense, in pain, right? Because you see someone just clenching their fists. It's not normal. If they clench the fist towards you, it's a little bit different, right? But if they're just clenching their fist, you know something is paining them. But how about using these symbols to indicate everything's fine? Because we do it here, right? Someone says, how are you doing? You say, I'm fine. You may signal thumbs up or some other message. Let's look at a very interesting example. This is all allowed, and this is also one way to communicate without having to say it. So thumbs up symbol, let's take a look at its benefit. There's a narration in the Tariq ibn Ma'in, number 1161, that Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, one of the scholars or his students came to him, and he was talking about a hadith about virtue and a hadith about prohibition. So the question was, he was asked him about, was regarding Muhammad bin Ishaq, the very famous seerah scholar, etc. And then Ahmed was asked, as what comes from halal and haram, some of the people of knowledge responded to us like this. So the narrative is saying that when we came to halal and haram issues, can we use weak hadith or weaker hadith, or can we use stronger hadith? This is a discussion amongst the scholars of hadith. So my point is this last point. The student says, when it came to these kind of issues, Imam Ahmed, when he came to us, he joined his hands together and kept his thumbs pointing upwards. So when we asked him halal and haram and the hadith weak, he gave us the thumbs up symbol. Sheikh Faisal Haji said it's the okay symbol, means it's good. And the fact that Imam Ahmed used that to clarify something, imagine someone will say, is that a uslub ilmi? Yeah. If someone tells you this, usually means no problem. But the fact that Imam Ahmed did that, right, is something that would show that it's considered, right, acceptable. But the fact that the student wrote it down, that Imam Ahmed, when I asked him about the hadith, about halal, haram, and the weakness, he said thumbs up. Allahu Akbar, right? It's very interesting. Imam Ahmed, we know how Imam Ahmed is. Sahib wara', right? He always stays away from any doubtful. But there's no problem in that. You see, these kinds of context of teaching is very important because the teacher knows the student is going to take away what he said in the dars. So Imam Ahmed is using these cues and we use them every day. But imagine how gestures can be used as a way to let someone know what you're feeling, but also in a way that you can also make sure the person will benefit from it without having to say the explicit. And there's so many other examples in the Prophet ﷺ's life and the Sahaba as well, that they would take a look at the person, how they're interacting, how they're, for example, sitting, how are they moving, what does their face look like. The Prophet ﷺ, for example, they would read his face all the time to see whether or not he was upset, he was happy, etc. And the Sahaba likewise. What I want to take from this point is that body language is very important, but also we need to be mindful that we can express ourselves to our language, to our body, the way that we might not express ourselves to our words, especially our eyes. And that's why a lot of body language, right, material is specified in the eyes. And the eyes are special because the eyes can really tell you how somebody's feeling. Whether the eyes are dilated, they're open widely, or smaller, or they're blinking a lot. All of this is a important point because the non-Muslims, they say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But also our scholars, they say the same thing. I'm going to give you something now. قال ابن قيم رحمه الله, he said, most firasa, معدم التعلق الفراسة بالعين. Most firasa is done through the eyes. فإنها مراءة القلب. فإنها مراءة القلب. For the eyes are the window or the mirror to the heart. وعنوان فيما فيه, and it's the signpost or the title page of what's inside of it. ثم باللسان, then your tongue, right? Then etc. etc. And why is this important? Because Islam confirms that. Ibn Qayyim says it more than once, that point. So it's important when we look at somebody's eyes, it's a big deal. Because if you want to know someone how they're feeling, you can tell by their eyes. You could be saying, I'm okay, and the eyes are saying, I'm not okay. But some of us, we take things literally. So the guy says okay. Just look at his eyes. Does he look okay? Right? That's what you should be asking. And it's especially pertinent for those who are husband, wife, and spouses. For the wife, she will always say, I'm okay. And that means I'm not okay. Right? So some of us were too literal. Right? So she says, okay, did you look? Or you're not looking? And that's why when we look to talk to people, we look in their eyes. Why? Same benefit. When you look someone in the eyes, it means I'm paying attention. But also it means I'm serious, right? Sometimes it scares you. Right? Someone looks at you in the eyes like, subhanAllah, I don't know what he wants. Right? And so sometimes you get scared if someone looks in the eyes. Sometimes it means I'm listening to you. But if you don't look at someone through the eyes, the scholars and the non-Muslims, they agree, the psychologists, that looking someone in the eyes means I'm paying attention. Hence the Sharia encourages to look at people in the eyes. Again, men to men, of course, right, brothers? Right? Not talking men looking women in the eyes. I'm talking men to men. The husband and wife is different. Look at somebody, talk to him, look in their direction at the very least. But a lot of times we don't do that. And this is why sometimes the communication is failed. Somebody could be making a plea for help. For example, someone's asking you for something and they're looking at you for attention. Right? This is called a bid for attention. Someone's trying to say, look, I need some money, and you're not looking at him. The person's already asking for money, he's maybe feeling humiliated. You're not looking at him. He's probably thinking, forget this. I'm not going to ask anymore because I asked and the guy, he's not even looking at me. But you look at someone, you can read, subhanAllah, he needs the money or he needs the help. I'm there for you. That, just the fact that saying I'm going to help you, it can change his life. That's it. That's all you have to do because you're looking. For brothers, why is it important? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he spoke to people, did he face them? Yes. He used to face them. In the Quran, we also have that encouragement not to look away from people when we are talking to them. And it's interesting because, again, if we bring this all home to the house, especially the marital home, a lot of people, they have bad communication because they start off by not even looking at the person. قال الله تعالى, Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تُسَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْمَرْحَةِ. Do not turn your cheek towards the people. What does that mean? Check, you read the tafsir of the ayah. It's very interesting. Shaykh Uthaymeen in his tafsir, he mentioned this benefit. وَلَا تُسَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ. Do not turn your face away from men with pride. One interpretation is out of arrogance, another interpretation generally. When you talk to people, look at them directly. And Shaykh Uthaymeen says, the fa'idah of the ayah, when you talk to people, look at them in the direction. Some of us will start off by looking here and there, and you say, I'm listening. What are you listening? وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَهُمْ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ. We're going to talk about the next week, communication skills, because many of us are terrible. You think you're good, but you should ask somebody else what they think. And one of the problems, you're talking to someone, looking right there. And if you're talking to your wife, no, you can't be looking here and there and say, I'm listening. And you're not listening. And another problem we have is a cell phone. The kuffar, they call it phubbing. You're snubbing someone on your phone when you talk to them. Yeah. And the phone, someone's talking to you, that means I don't care about you because I'm on the phone. The phone is more important. So sometimes, ikhwa, we're human beings. Men even are sensitive. Someone says, I'm talking to you, and you're like, yeah, what do you need? It's like, yeah, okay. So they walk away because it's a signal. And sometimes we do it to say, get lost. Right? Someone comes to you, just go on your phone because the guy looks like you do nothing, clearly. So the guy runs away because he thinks you're busy, but you're not. You did that on purpose. So what happens is people, when they're conversing with people and they're debating, or at home, the argument's going on, I don't want to talk anymore, get on my phone. Before you close the door, I say, I'm tired of this, I'm going to walk away. Now I don't have to walk away, I'm going on my phone. And I carry on the conversation online. Astaghfirullah. That's what we do. Go on the phone and start talking bad over there. Because most of us behind the phone, we're not the best. So you can see something here. The Sharia takes consideration for these things, brothers and sisters. Next week we're going to talk about communication. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, all these qualities were grouped in him under the ayah, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you have the highest, you have one high moral character. And what's also very fascinating is the fact that the Sharia came to encourage this and nothing less. So Ibn Qayyim calls it a type of firasa with the eyes. So you can read someone, again, you have to study it, right, from the scientific perspective, and some people, if they have different type of firasa, they maybe even tell more based on what Allah gives them. But the idea is you can tell by somebody's eyes what might be going on, right? Sometimes, right, pain, suffering. Same with the lips, same with the hands, we said gestures, and in the body language, the arms and legs. Right, crossing the hands, right, that's usually defensive. Closed off, hands inside means someone's aggressive. And the same thing when you sit down. Sitting down with the legs crossed means that somebody is closed posture. Legs open means open. So if you want to meet somebody, you want to make it look like I'm open, I have nothing to hide, you meet them with open hands. Nothing to hide, nothing, right? And as Muslims, we don't have to worry too much on that, because someone comes to you and says, Assalamu alaikum, what does that mean? They make a dua for you, peace between me and you, and Allah's mercy, and so we're on, inshallah, we're in safety. But if someone comes to you, no salam, and nothing, be careful. You don't know what they want. But also, if you notice that someone comes to you, the way you're standing is making them feel uncomfortable, they don't want to talk to you, you have to be more open. Especially if we're doing da'wah, brothers and sisters, because all of this can be applied to da'wah as well as family. If you want to do da'wah, someone comes to you, and Muslim, you have to welcome them. That's why when you open your hands, you welcome someone who feels like you want to talk. But if you say one da'wah, when you close, and say, this person is probably a very difficult character. And all of this also encourages us to try our best to bring these aspects into our lives, but also monitor people's behavior. Another thing that's interesting amongst it is also proximity. And that is to do how close you stand beside somebody. It's very interesting. The Western culture, we like to stand far away from each other. It's individuals, right? We just stand far away, but it's like personal spaces, like mashallah. COVID, right? Everyone likes that. Back home, we don't have that concept. Somebody's right in your face, like, subhanAllah, what is he doing? He's invading my personal space. But especially when you go to the Haram Mecca, some must have sabr. Right? It's very important, because some people go to the Haram Mecca and, astaghfirullah, forgive them. Be careful. Because people are just touching you, like they're not used to that. So one problem we notice, if you come close to someone, what does that mean? If you come very close to somebody, if you're not very close, but closer, it means you want to talk to them privately. You move further away, you want to keep away. Proximity works when you want to teach something to somebody, especially with children. You walk by them, they're doing something wrong, proximity is enough to get them to stop it. Yeah, you know that? You just walk close. Because you know what they're doing. You walk by, like, oh, they suddenly starts behaving. Because proximity means I'm onto you. I'm getting closer, literally. But sometimes it works. That's enough of a deterrent. But also if someone says, come close, means the person cares about you. As an example, we see proximity was used a lot in the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sahaba. And of course, they had certain ways of drawing someone near. For example, holding hands, right? For men, that's the aada, the Arab. Obviously here it's not. But that aada, what was it? What the meaning behind it? Proximity. I'm close to you. Someone close to me, I want to tell you something. So the idea, if you walk close to people further away, it's a sign of what people have of relationship or what you're telling them. So if you're walking with somebody and you're walking far away from them, it means I don't want nothing to do with you, kind of. But if you walk very close to somebody and someone you know, that also means you like to be in their close proximity. Take that benefit and bring it to the hadith about two men sitting together and a third man trying to sit between them. The prohibition of splitting two people sitting together. Why is it prohibited? We mentioned a few weeks ago. Why is it prohibited without seeking permission? So one interpretation is because they sat close together because they're friends and they love each other for Allah's sake. Proximity. And you came and you sat between them. You're not a friend. Okay, maybe you are, but you sit over there. You see the point? So this is actually powerful because most of us are like, so what? I come between them. And these guys want to be together. Because if you sit together also to share the love for Allah's sake, or you want to be next to a certain person, that's a sign. But imagine you have a friend and you sit far away, you move far away. Proximity matters, right? It actually matters. It's a very interesting concept. All of this, brothers and sisters, takes us back to the point of becoming more aware of our surroundings and not becoming ghafir. وَلَا تَكُمْ مِنَ غَافِلِينَ. Allah says, don't be from the heedless. And the heedless is the person who doesn't get no message. He needs to be spoken to, tasrihan. All the time, he's got to stay like it is because that person doesn't get it. And that person may end up putting themselves in a position where things are going to be hurt. Yeah? And they're going to hurt their feelings and other people's feelings. And it's not going to be something beneficial. And I want to give just two stories or two hadith. And then inshallah we'll finish with this much. And again, a lot of this information, you can go back to that kitab I was citing, Manhaj Nabawi. There are other books too, but I'll just mention the name for those who want to return to it. So the kitab I was reading from is called Manhaj Al-Nabawi fi Ta'biri bi-Lughat al-Jasadi. This is a nice word. So again, there's many books like these where scholars and researchers have spent time just focusing on one thing. I want to talk about two stories now, narrations to teach us the importance of not being heedless. Because you need to be aware. You don't want to get the message by the time it's too late. One example is the hadith in the Sunan and Nasa'i and others. It's authentic hadith. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu came to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he wanted to marry Fatima. And of course Abu Bakr is much older than Fatima, but the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had different plans, so he said to Abu Bakr, "Innaha saghira," she's young. And then Umar came, asking for her hand, and the Prophet said, "Innaha saghira," she's young. Then Ali came, and he married him to her. Why the Prophet said she's young, even though, how old is Fatima at that age? Anyone knows? Taqriban, how old is Fatima when she got married? About 15 years old. And Ali is about 20 something, 21, 20, around there. So she's not that young. But young in the sense the Prophet ﷺ really wanted her to marry Ali. Because they're closer in age. That's one of the proofs to show that if a married couple are closer in age, it brings more muwafaqa, it brings more agreement. Although if you can also be far in age, because the Prophet ﷺ married Aisha and he's older than her. But the point is, the Prophet wanted Fatima to marry Ali. But he didn't want to Abu Bakr Umar, Shaykhain. The Shaykhain to say no. So he gave him Talmih, he's young. He didn't say, no, you guys are, in a way you're too old. No, you can't say it like that. So if you don't get the hint, what's the problem? Imagine some of us, someone told you that, but like you could be arguing and going around and around. At the end, you're going to be told what you don't want to hear. If someone told you, I'll think about it. Maybe, we'll see about it. That what it means? Hit the road, Jack. That's enough. I'll think about it. Some of us, we have to keep bothering until the person says, no, get out of here. You're not for you. And then later you go home feeling sad. Why? It's your fault. He told you in a nice way. You had to relate to that. And this is why a lot of people, you notice, they don't know talmih. Some people are shy just like you are shy. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the shyest person. So he gave them an excuse, which is, scholars say, was correct. He didn't lie. He's young, but he also meant like, I have someone else in mind. I think it'll work. Allahu Akbar. That shows you again, brothers, the importance for us to also be reading people's language. And we'll talk about next week more. There's one hadith about this as well. I want to mention that also talks about the same issue, which has to do with someone who doesn't take these messages as is given to them, then eventually he might end up getting offended, right, because of the misunderstanding. And I don't know the exact hadith here, but if I could find it here, otherwise we'll just give the meaning of it. So the gist of the hadith is, again, I think it's, the hadith was about Sahabi. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave him some money, he asked for money. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave it to him. And then he asked again, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave it to him. And then he asked again, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then told him, this money is a fitna, and it's sweet and it's green. And he explained to him that don't ask for money. If it's given to you, take it. If it's not, then don't ask for it. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had to just say it to him directly at this point. But when he gave him the first time, he's hoping that he will not ask again. He asked second time, then finally felt, okay, now let's keep asking. I have to tell them not to ask. And this is just the meaning of the hadith. But the idea is, scholars take from that it's not beneficial for somebody not to get the hint about something the first time, because what it leads to then is that somebody will have to force to tell you something what you don't want to hear. For example, if you keep asking somebody something and he can't give you a signal that, please, I don't want to do that. At the end, if you keep asking, what's left is you have to say it openly. No. And then you get hurt. But who is the fault here? The first person, because he didn't get the other person's message. And next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about emotional intelligence and communication, because it's one of the five, right, that we talked about in the beginning of the class. And emotional intelligence is broken into these categories, the components. And so far we did empathy, self-awareness, self-regulation. And today we did body language. And next week, inshallah, we'll do social skills. The prophetic method of speaking. Because there's books. How the Prophet converse to people. It's very beneficial because it also makes you successful and talk to people and get what you want, inshallah, of course, in a good way. And also get that person to feel good. So we'll talk about that, inshallah. If anyone has any questions for the salah, we'll take it, inshallah. Salah is 9 o'clock, right? It's 9:15 or 9? 9, right? 9, okay, play.
When it comes to private counsel, like two people discussing each other privately, and like the message, for example, sitting on the floor, do the person, should they basically like be facing each other, or is it enough that the person, for example, is like, maybe someone was sitting down facing the qibla, and then another person approaches him, but he just looks at him, but he keeps on talking to him while facing the qibla. Is it better that he turns and looks, like basically gives them the attention, or is it okay?
So when it comes to talking to people and turning towards them, it's recommended. Right? I'm not going to say it's haram, but it's like if you want effective conversation, you should be turning towards someone. And this is important because when people talk to each other, there's a difference between how men and women talk. Men, typically when we talk, we don't have to look at each other for us to be able to communicate. But when women, it's a bigger deal, right? And that's why when the husband and wife speak, he has to look. Because looking the other way, it also means I'm not giving you attention. But also in general, it's not a good method because the person, you can't read the other things. So it's not haram, for example, for us to be facing the other way and I'm talking to you. But if I want to really get your attention, I'm going to face you. Because I want you to listen to me, especially if I want you to feel special. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, one thing about his interactions, every Sahabi felt that he was someone in his eyes. So when he met Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they thought he was the most beloved Sahabi. Because he will talk to them in a way that they feel like he's so special. So facing towards a person, even in the majlis ilmi, hatta Jum'atul Khutbah. Abdul bin Mas'ud's narration that when the Sahaba gathered in the Khutbah Jum'ah, they used to turn towards the Khatib and face the Khatib. That's the Sunnah. They didn't face the Qibla, they faced the Khatib, so listen to him better. So that's a good habit in general we should keep. But if someone turns away, it's not wrong. But you could say that it could lead to miscommunication. Right? Because if I'm saying something to you, I'm looking away, and then it might have been something not nice, and I don't know how you're feeling about it. How can I read your face if I'm looking away from you? I mean, that's if I even care about your faces. That's another thing. If I even care what your reaction is, that's another thing. So I recommend turning towards. And it's much more effective. You'll notice that that kind of conversation is more effective. But it's not haram or halal. This is in Bab al-Adab. And Bab al-Adab, we said before, Bab al-Irshad, it's a chapter of guidance. So if there's a command in the hadith, it teaches us what? Istihbab. If it's a prohibition, it teaches us karaha, prohibition. But when the Prophet ﷺ used to do it, maybe next week we'll mention some more examples, you should not do it, right? You should do it, right? Because he's the best communicator. Right? And that's one thing that we want to have good communication, because most problems come from bad communication. So I would recommend that. Wallahu a'lam. Anyone else have a question? Any other questions? طيب, shall we end with this much? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.